You are listening to River West Radio on WXR WLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. Support for this program comes from Collectivo Coffee and Troubadour Bakery, makers of artisan breads and scratched bake goodies. Visitors to Collectivo's Bayview Cafe can look in on Troubadour Bakers as they prepare breads and cafe favorites daily. More info is at collectivocoffee.com. Excellent. Welcome to Cinema Fireside. Yeah, life is wild, that's for sure. It's crazy, it's good, it's challenging. It has its ups and downs, all of that great stuff. You have one shot at it, that's it. You believe in reincarnation, you're probably lucky if you come back as a grasshopper or something like that. So I wouldn't count on it, but who knows. Listeners, thanks for listening. If you're listening live, it is a beautiful autumnal evening in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It is dark. They switched the time on a Sunday or two ago, so it gets lighter in the morning and darker at night, and the window of light will continue to close in on both sides, so the days will become exceedingly shorter. I want to thank Tom Pankowski for providing one heck of a sugar cookie, which was eaten outside prior to the show, and he helped nourish this upcoming hour, so thank you very much, Tom. And let's see, it's this is a show about films, about maybe theater, books, life. It's about Gabe calling in. Thank you, Gabe, for calling in. Gabe does a lot of research for this show, a lot of research for his life, a lot of critical thinking, which pays off in extraordinary dividends once he gets on the air here with us. So the Halloween season came and went. The horror season, though, still lingers. And saw a couple more films in that genre, such as Dead of Night last night, which is a curiosity piece. I found favor in that when I encounter a gathering of colleagues in a cozy sitting room with smokes and drinks and discussing psychological and spooky matters. That sounds really good to me, and that is something that Dead of Night possesses. It's a English production, I believe, from the mid-40s, but unlike Gabe, I did not secure the necessary data to be exactly specific about it. This is Dead of Night is the one with the ventriloquist dummy gone awry. So that's kind of what it's most known for. I also had the great honor of revisiting This Night I'll Possess Your Corpse. I believe it's from Brazil. It's in Portuguese. And in films, you are not to speechify. Fundamentally, you're not supposed to. You are supposed to create a continuing drama where the stakes rise in honor of that drama, so you don't stop with agendas. But with This Night I'll Possess Your Corpse, I believe from the mid-60s, our lead, and I think my man's name is Coffin Joe, does take the time to speechify, but that is actually a conceit of the film, one of its many curiosities, so it actually works in this, and you listen with great attention and wonderment and joy. So that's good stuff. Last night I fell asleep to Sunday night radio dramas, and I stayed up so I could fall asleep to Suspense, and that particular episode was On a Country Road starring Cary Grant. Now, I've heard this episode before. Man, I was so tired last night I couldn't make heads or tails of it. And Sarah Lou just walked in, and she really is a strong presence in this whole endeavor, along with Zavla Play, certainly. We thank them wholeheartedly for keeping this whole thing going. So, yeah, This Night I'll Possess Your Corpse. If you haven't seen it, it's... Hey, Martin, good evening. Martin also makes sure things keep rolling. So, if you haven't seen it, check that out. And it is well, I don't want to give it away, but it is a great curiosity piece. And if you haven't seen The Incredible Torture Show from '76, that's another great horror film. Of course, along with the more obvious Carnival of Souls, which I just checked out. I know Criterion released it recently. And speaking of Criterion, they released Orson Welles' Othello. And that has the making of Othello on it. I'm not talking about one of these cheap things shot on video interviewing people 2,000 years after the film was shot or anything like that. But this is actually, I think it was filmed in the late 70s, if I'm correct. Somewhere around there, we'll see. But it's entitled Filming Othello. I've yet to see it, and I cannot wait to see it. That's going to be real good stuff. And I think there was lots of good book sales around this time of year, and you can really, really come across some great finds for basically next to nothing. Theater, film, all of that stuff. And this is definitely the season for that. I also saw a film from the early 70s, The Candy Snatchers, and it's hard to in one way argue that it's in the horror milieu, but then content-wise, what differentiates it from Last House on the Left, it's kind of like the same scenario, whereas Last House on the Left you can definitely call a horror film. So I don't know what you'd have to see both of them and say, well, why can one be a horror film and the other one not? So that's a curious argument which circulates once one thinks about it. And I don't really go out to films at the theater, but I did see Blade Runner 2049 on the big screen because I had seen the original one in '82 when it came out. So I thought, well, why not bookend it, 35 years later and say that I did, and now I can say that I did. And I think the first time was at Northtown Cinemas on North 76th Street. I believe that's where Blade Runner was. So, yeah, 35 years later, saw the second one, definitely. And let's see, Kill Baby Kill was seen at the UWM Cinema for the horror season. And right now, my mind cannot process a memory, so I don't know what that was about. I will say I found at the library for $1 Ingmar Bergman, A Project for the Theater. I know I mentioned this before. It has 3 plays which he adapted for the stage, and one of them is Scenes from a Marriage. And what a delight to read chronological parts of it from day to day. Just a heavenly experience, as in modern domestic plays. Obviously, the mythological one is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee, and he follows that up with another great domestic play, A Delicate Balance. And Osage County by Tracy Letts is right on par with Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. There are things in our life that are mythic, and it will never be as famous as Who's a Virginia Woolf, but it is as good as Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and that's Osage County. But, with pretentious elites, you can't say that, but you can. And again, it's most of these things, like I said, you can never beat the myth, but that doesn't mean that it's not as good as. It's just it'll never be as good as, but it'll never be as mythological as is more of the correct answer. It's just a bunch of hoodwinking, and you just don't buy into it. I mean, there's great works done all the time that are on par with the prior works. Just because something as all things of just all they do is gain mythological momentum. But when you actually read the text, see the film, you say, it's okay. So anyway, so Scenes from a Marriage falls right into that incredible pantheon. It sounds like myth-making to me. Pantheon of great domestic plays. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, A Delicate Balance, Osage County, whatever, and Scenes from a Marriage. Just wonderful. Gabe, we're going to hit you in about like 2 to 3 minutes, that's for sure. And so, yeah, what a wild life. A lot of writing done. Working on many screenplays, full-length plays, this, that, the other thing, and some filming coming up, and this, that, the other thing. So the way that is done, I do not have phone conversations unless absolutely necessary. Tom gets a kick out of that one. Yeah, I mean, very few and far between. They're usually born out of necessity. But yeah, that talking about random petty amusements is not going to make it in this lifetime. And you got to operate with a serious sense of discretion if you want to move forward. Believe you me, the successful people making things roll along, you know, that from birth to death, eyes on the prize, man. So don't go out at night. You know, I was out see the Neil Young tribute. That was great. Dylan is coming up, and that'll be great. All of that stuff, and it is quite the life if you know how to live it. But yeah, going to a bar, having your ears permanently damaged by bad music, have people screaming in your ear about utter nonsense and all the energy it takes to respond to that, a big no thank you. So when you move around, operate with discretion, such as this great Neil Young tribute is. It is well worth it. Milwaukee Filmmaker Alliance had their initial opening night at the Art Museum. It was a great event. No small talk, went right for it. Seemed like the one and only table available. And I'll get to you, Gabe. And so everyone had to be standing, hundreds of people, man, just zeroed right into that table, no small talk, got like 4 immediate plates of food. If someone needed to talk, they had to join us, you know, so that was, we were squared away, man, that night. We got the job done and got it done right. Wouldn't you say so, Gabe?
It does definitely sound like it. You know, Mark, you've been talking about this idea of myth, the mythos, over the actuality, one's own take, the myth being larger than the actual individual necessity or the individual perception. And people that can break that divide, that decide for themselves, I think it's important to abide in some regard, to adhere and take note of the mythos of things, the legend, because it's a good starting point. It's a good guide to the path that's been well worn by those before us and those passionate before us, writers, scholars, fans, critics, contemporaries, peers. There's a reason of that reverence for certain works of art, certain works of the humanities, gain notoriety, gain fame, gain relevance, sort of linger in our consciousness and linger in our collective thoughts, and are still worth discussing decades, centuries, eons later. So, you know, some of these, when people ask me about certain films, when I depending on how serious certain individuals are about diving into film as a whole, music as a whole, comics as a whole, or specific subgenres, specific sects within the, not just my interests, but of what I've studied, like what I would recommend in terms of what's generally considered the greats, what I think this person is generally going to like, or what I think this person is generally interested in, or what they're going to take pleasure in. So I always ask people when they ask for recommendations, well, are you looking for stuff to be stimulated? Like, are you looking for entertainment? What kind of entertainment? Or are you looking to actually gain cultural knowledge? Are you not looking to be stupefied, to be glazed over? Are you not looking for a movie that's basically going to concede to what you already want to do, and you don't actually want to change your notions or your taste or your caliber in any way, shape, or form? You just want the same thing. You want a slightly more interesting and involved and louder, brighter, more cacophonic, which is usually what people think that art is stimulation, where it's actually, everyone has their own definition, but so it's difficult sometimes to get past that mythos, but other times it can be a good starting point, because some people want this general list of the great works. They want to watch the greatest films that have ever been made for different reasons. For some people, it's that they keep coming across these films, and they, even if they don't necessarily enjoy every item on the list, it gives them a well-rounded view of the history of something. It gives them the well-rounded intake of a collection of ideas from a wide variety of authors and filmmakers and actors and perspectives. World cinema, the same thing. So when you can find that, when you can find someone who is genuinely interested in looking at the world from a larger perspective and a larger lens, and is not looking just to get what they already like, or get something that concedes to their taste, where they're in charge. And it's not about the movie, it's about them. And if they didn't like it, then that means it's a bad movie. And that's it. That's as far as a discussion can go about a film. But if you can find a friend, a person, a colleague, a coworker, that you can have intelligent discussions about works of art with, where you can have intelligent, thoughtful discussions about things that you didn't necessarily do, because you can appreciate something not being about you, that's something to cherish. So anyone out there, if that's something that you do appreciate, if you find that, even if it's in an unlikely place, do not take that for granted. If those things are important to you, music, film, culture, fine art, books, and if looking at funny videos on YouTube is not as far as the majority of your cultural intake stretches each day, please cherish that person, those people that come into your lives. And as annoying as they may be, people that have that earnestness, that thirst for the unknown, the unexperienced, it's a wonderful thing. And I have a couple of people that I wouldn't necessarily consider them my friends, but they genuinely have a thirst for different art forms, and we always share our ideas. We always sort of share our crossroads of encounters, and it's always neat to find out where their travels have taken them, and where I've gone with mine, and our overlapping journeys and stuff, and our shared perspective. But it's been difficult being down here, because I don't have the wide milieu of friends and acquaintances and history like I do in Milwaukee, where any neighborhood I go into, any part of the city has a collection of stories of people, places, friends. My interactions, my friends that I can go visit here is very limited. So in many ways, it gives me much more time to focus on what I need to do: writing, researching, assessing, and staying on track with what makes me happy and what keeps me sane and sober. So, with that being said, I guess I went off on a little monologue there too. That was unexpected.
And you have every right to, Gabe.
Thanks, Mark. Mark, I'll tell you, autumn this year has this crisp presence. It's here. And down south, there's about a 15-degree difference between Kansas City and Milwaukee, and there's a humidity difference too. It doesn't have that thick moisture like we have up near the Great Lakes around summertime. We don't have that large body of water. We have a different kind of heat down here, though. where it's unchanging. The weather, when it gets hot, it stays hot. And there's this sort of damp intensity to it, but it doesn't have the wavering of temperatures like we do up north. And when it gets cold down here, it has this sort of general cold. It's not familiar to me at all. It's very strange. It's sort of it's teasing around the edges of depression and dysthymia. It doesn't quite go full on into misery or into scorn and hatred of the human emotional spectrum. The weather down here is strangely pleasant. It's off-puttingly pleasant. But every day when I have a little bit of time on my days off from work, or even when I have to work the night shift, I'll just make sure I've been building a little bit of a different routine than what I've been normally doing. And I make sure to read some poetry every day from a few different poets. And I've been reading William Blake, been reading Neruda, and I've been reading William Carlos Williams. And all the Williams Carlos Williams is a collection. It's his volume 2 of his collected poems. I've been working on that for numerous years, so it's really good to start the day that way. It really helps with depression, and it really opens up, that melancholic eye rather than just sort of letting things build. Poetry really has a way of allowing closure and opening new ideas and new doors. So I've been reading poetry from different time periods and completely different styles and perspectives. And it's good. It's good to just, I've been spending more time reading than just watching movies in my like leisure free time. But there's still been a lot of movies that have gotten taken care of recently. The four major ones that I would say the three major ones are that were all huge successes in terms of what I would say as successful as a film can be. I watched the HBO Rolling Stone documentary, not on the band the Rolling Stones, but on the publication Rolling Stone, which is just an immense work of art. Another total champion of HBO documentary films, which just continues to do extraordinary work from all walks and reaches of life. One complaint that I'd have to say that I'd have about watching on myself or watching too many documentaries is it doesn't give much room for artistic license, for deduction, for subtext, for inference, and for the human condition, because it's so literal. Documentaries, when they're done with a sharp journalistic and sociological edge, as important and as timely or as interesting or as thoughtful as the material can be, at its best, it's very nutritious junk food. I was reflecting back on their Spielberg film that they made that I watched a few weeks ago that I was just enamored with. It's just about as entertaining of a film as I can watch. A really, really erudite, crisp, like as sharp as that first bite of corn off of just a beautiful stalk of corn on the cob. It's about as lush and crisp and tender and chewy and perfect as it can get. But at the end, it's just corn. Most of it, it's just this cob that you're left with bite marks, swollen bite marks all over it. And most of it, the majority of it, the volume of the actual corn cob, the peeling of the layers, the husks, it gets thrown away. And the actual cob, it gets thrown away. And yes, the corn was very nutritious and every bite was sweet and it has some nutritional value. But in the end, I already know what corn on the cob tastes like. I didn't season it any differently. It didn't have any surprises for me. It was corn, it was butter, and when it was over, I threw it away.
Wow.
So, as well done as these HBO documentary films are, they don't really change my perspective on anything besides the information that they can enlighten me with, which it's like taking notes in a college class, in any class. It would taking notes out of a book, just studying up on history. I can do that anytime I want with any book that I open, with any nonfiction book. So they're recent films that I was enamoring over: the Nora Ephron documentary, the Mike Nichols documentary, the Hitchcock Truffaut documentary, Spielberg documentary, and now they got this Rolling Stone documentary. Alex Gibney has done some great work for HBO. He's an incredible documentary filmmaker. I would put him in between Morgan Spurlock and Errol Morris, in that he has styles similar to both filmmakers. He has this ability to cram in large amounts of information, technical information, make it very witty, make it very personal, to make it feel as though you're actually present. You're having this sort of one-on-one intimate conversation with someone, but also remove you to the point where you feel like you're entrenched in a montage of history that's both very educational and very entertaining. He doesn't get too much into the humanistic subtext of Errol Morris's documentaries, where it's all about the human factor, where it's all about the small details, it's all about the little poetic nuances of life. And he doesn't get into just the documentary, just the information. He gets into both. So his movies are very digestible for information junkies and for culture junkies, especially people enamored with pop culture and film and history and the interaction of all that. So in many ways, the Rolling Stone 2-part HBO documentary, which is 4 hours, and it's just every minute of it is just loaded with perfection. It's as good as a documentary about pop culture in the latter half of the 20th century can get, most likely. You've got almost an hour devoted to Hunter S. Thompson, which Johnny Depp narrates in the voice of Hunter S., reprising, the role that he's in one way, shape, or form done twice already, once with the Rum Diaries and once with Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is a variation on the Hunter character. So you've got that. You've got them going into the mythos of Hunter S. Thompson. You've got archive footage of Hunter S. Thompson. And you have the creators and the heads of Rolling Stone at the time and current discussing in depth, both in terms of the information and the context of why this stuff was so important and continues to be so important. So it's both informative of the pieces that I was completely ignorant of how important Rolling Stone's place in history, both journalism, culture, writing, writing as a whole in the latter part of the 20th century. It really, really is one of those documentaries that doesn't really do anything new. It doesn't shed any new light on anything, but it's still high-class entertainment. I enthusiastically, voracious, and wildly recommend this film for anyone who's interested in anything about the second half of the 20th century. I gobbled it up in I think in a day and a half. It was a no-brainer. There was nothing else that was going to get anywhere near being watched between this or that. The Reagan Show, which is a documentary that I've been wanting to see for close to a year, that CNN Films put together, which is comprised completely of what they called White House TV, which was documentary behind-the-scenes video footage that the White House staff shot while Reagan was in office. It's composed entirely of footage that they shot of Reagan while he was in office. Same thing, junk food, but exquisite junk food. Very, very high-concept junk food, but junk food. And then you have the B-side, which is Errol Morris's new documentary on Elsa Dorfman, who is one of the more revered portrait photographers of the last 25 years. The last 40 years. And it's about her discussing her work, her life, and some of the more intricate subtleties of photography as a whole, and more than just her photography. It never goes into the real metaphysical depths that Susan Sontag goes into in her unparalleled writings on photography. but any Errol Morris documentary that gets made is at the very least worth immediately seeking out and watching. And he has not slowed down over time. In fact, he's become more prolific with age. He's put out more films per year than he ever did when he was younger. But the quality of his films, I have to say that the content, the meaning, and even the societal impact really has lessened over time. But it's hard to beat works like The Thin Blue Line. There's like 3 or 4 other ones that are just unbelievable. The Animal Graveyard film and
Gates of Heaven.
Gates of Heaven, thank you, which is, in some ways one of the best documentaries ever made. The Thin Blue Line, which actually led to a man being released from prison. He stands in a class of documentary filmmakers that is that Les Blanc and a handful of others, or Werner Herzog, that very few come close to, because documentaries are very much about the literal, the exact, the pinpoint, the absolute, the sure. And one thing that's kind of loomed over me since I got done watching this Rolling Stone documentary is that enough to spend a large portion of my time watching films that are obvious? Is that any different than watching a game show? Obviously I'm taking things out of the cultural context. I'm learning information and I enjoy this information, but is it really meaningful to the larger condition of why films are so meaningful to me? And I decided that it's not. That those questions, the unanswered questions in fiction, are so important, and I haven't been asking myself those enough. So,
well, start asking.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Mark, there's an absolute gem of a film that I saw called The Measure of a Man. It's a French film. It came out 2 years ago, and it's a film that is mostly featuring a silent protagonist who does not speak. And this film reignited a fire that I needed lit. The main actor in the film won Best Actor at Cannes in 2015. And the film is about a gentleman who loses his job. He's in the high world of business, and he's used to making a high-figure salary, working in a very professional, very elite business world. And then when he's relieved of his job, he is jobless for numerous months and is going through any means to secure any job. But because of his age and because he's a little behind on training now, his layers of humiliation and the depths that he'll go to find a job lessen and lessen, go deeper and deeper. So finally, he finds a job as a security guard in a supermarket, and the majority of the film is about him dealing with the day-to-day activities of this job, of having to bring people into a small, dimly lit office in the back of a dirty hallway and interrogate people about why they've stolen something. And this is in economic hardship France. It's a grueling film because it doesn't have answers. Most of the characters don't have specific answers, and there are no specific outcomes.
Well, Tom has pointed out one specific outcome. He said it's on Netflix.
It's a terrific film. I've been wanting to see this for over 2 years now, and it was well worth the wait. It's a terrific film. It's full of heart. It's full of pain. It's full of joy. It's full of love. It's full of family. And it's also full of some great performances, really understated performances. It's a masterful film. I highly recommend it to anyone.
Well, I think we're going to take your advice.
Yeah,
undoubtedly.
It's just a great film. Under the Shadow, which I had mentioned briefly about 2 weeks ago on the show, the Iranian horror film that takes place during the Iran-Iraq war when Tehran was under siege by missiles from Iraq. And Tehran was essentially being evacuated and buildings were being evacuated. there's a woman and her daughter who are populating a tenement building, and the woman, main character, is extremely westernized and has this very objective way of thinking, and begins to suspect that there are paranormal forces at work, even though all of her training and all of her life, she's been led to believe that everything is simple, everything is one-dimensional, and not simple and one-dimensional. That's not what I mean at all. But that everything can be understood through science and reason. And her training for becoming a doctor, which she never completed, which keeps coming up in increasingly more and more bizarre ways that show the unraveling complexity of her psychological condition, begins to show the unnerving components of her anxieties, of her built-up years of resentment, and also it's another masterful Iranian film showing the political scheme and also the repression that women in Iran and in Middle Eastern countries face on a daily basis, both overtly and subtly. So another great addition to the Iranian film canon, Under the Shadow, which is by definition a horror film, but is in its most important, but I would recommend for its societal observations and for its just candid observations about day-to-day life in the 1980s. Very, very entertaining, very well-made film.
Good work, Gabe, and appreciate that.
Absolutely. Mark, Dead of Night, from 45. The horror film you had mentioned, the British horror film.
Yes.
That is just a terrific, terrific horror film. It's actually scary too, which is something I can't say for most horror films. It genuinely has an unnerving factor that stayed with me. In fact, I remember I watched it about 4 years ago, I want to say, and it genuinely scared me to the point where I was scared after it was over. Like I was still in a state of terror, which classic black and white horror films don't usually do that. So I was very impressed with that movie.
Yeah, I could see as a youngin that you would be could be frightened by it most certainly, because it's very atmospherically shot at times. Sometimes it's kind of like pretty prosaically shot with kind of like clunky lighting and clunky staging. Yep. I mean, not too bad, but then there's some that are actually poetic. When I'm saying poetic, it has soft edges, as in the editing is smooth, the cinematography is well done, the lighting is pretty invigorating. So it's kind of like a mixed bag. But I definitely can see as a youngster being unnerved by certain segments of it. Definitely.
Sure. Mark, I have to bring it up. So it's autumn, and we're going into winter. Does Ingmar Bergman come to your mind as often as it comes to mine?
Dude, I'm reading Scenes from a Marriage as we speak.
Yep. I mean, you mentioned
one of the offsprings of the turned into a play that he did. So yeah, Ingmar Bergman all the way, my man. Of course, it makes me think of him.
Yeah. He had one of his daughters was on the Diane Rehm show about a year ago, and she was discussing a memoir that she had written about her life with her father, that she had novelized and turned into a book, but it was mostly autobiographical. And she was discussing life with Ingmar Bergman and both his poetic sensibilities, but also that line between poetry and neuroses, where she was talking about how living with him was really strange because sometimes his demeanor and his the discussions that she would have with him as a child, it's like you could see these things as they appeared on film. You can absolutely understand where these films came from. It's like living with him was like living in these films in many ways. I mean, not in a literal context, but what he was preoccupied with, how he thought, what he spoke about, what what he read, what he encountered, and how he lived his life. The kinds of questions that he asked himself, and the kind of uncertainties that he had, and also the doubts that he had, and the resentment. The key that she said was that he was a very quietly resentful person, but that he was also very loud about it at other times, because he had been he had been really hurt by this guilt and this shame and this sort of this loud but silent need for religious superiority in his life, the way that his parents had just sort of like, well, that's just how it's done. And you don't question this, you don't speak out against this. There was no room for rebellion. There was no individuality that was allowed. So underneath it, and with all this fervor that was going on in his mind, was building these layers and layers of resentment, and layers and layers and layers of context. So when it was able to spill out, and after he, his earlier work, which was more lighthearted or a little less overtly, I guess doomsday-esque or something. I don't even know what words I would use, but so extreme in its moroseness. She also said that it's like other times you would have been completely baffled at the fact that this was the man that made these films, because he could be so light at heart, and he would play, he had these times where he could play with her, and he was just a completely pleasant, and she even was hesitant in using the word ordinary, because he just was complete. There'd be times where all he wanted to know about was how her day was at school, what were her favorite toys, what was her time, what books she was reading. And she said in that regard, he could be this great father, and in that he let me be a kid. But then on the flip side of it, he would go into full artist mode, where my world was entrenched in his world, where what was important to him became what dominated everything. So in that regard, she referred to that as sort of his religion that he imposed upon her, was this idea of brooding over the moral and mortal condition. And that he had no definite answers. He was not certain about anything. He had infinite amounts of questions, but did not assert to know anything, which I always found this interview was just endlessly entertaining and interesting, because Ingmar Bergman's work as a director and as a writer just has so many layers to it, and is just every film that he's ever made is at the very least worth watching. So as it gets closer to winter and darkness and the edges of fall, Bergman always comes up on my mind. And there's certain films that he made that literally were the cold, where darkness, where the seasons play such an integral role in his films, that it's impossible for me not to.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you, Gabe, for bringing that up. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I want to kind of even though it's more of a minor effort, I want to revisit Face to Face from '76. I know it's over at the library, so I think I'm gonna, when I get the time to do that. Definitely, I've one of the great books is Ingmar. It's called Images, and it's a journal of while he's making his films, and it is really one of the most compelling journals of psychological journals of filmmaking. It's a really handsome volume too. It's called Images, and of course his standard biography or autobiography is The Magic Lantern, but it's images you really want to key in on if you're into psychology and filmmaking, and it's by Ingmar Bergman. It's his journals, and also there's Lee Volman's Changes and Choices. It's a very accessible read. It's not any real dense texture, but it's her memoirs, and they're really fun to read as well. So, and yeah, I'm glad that you bring all of this stuff up because I got to kind of like start organizing all my Ingmar Bergman books. I should start organizing some books by filmmakers too because I'm reading Herzog's Guide to the Perplexed as well, and I got to finish off a great Cronenberg interview book that extensively goes through each of his films. I mean, yeah, Cronenberg is another great autumn, winter kind of filmmaker because a lot of his films were made at this time of year for the tax shelter system where the people that had liquid assets, who had money, they could divest of them for tax purposes and put them into films. And that was why many of, like we had mentioned, Cronenberg's films are filmed during the autumnal and the winter seasons to get those that money divested by the end of the year. So yeah, that's another one, Cronenberg for sure, and also radio dramas too. Great time to spend listening to them in these winter months, undoubtedly. What do you think, Gabe?
There's a few radio dramas that I think are worth listening to. I've been doing a little more research on them as you've been talking. You've been talking about these for years. So suspense.
I should hope so.
Well, suspense is definitely probably the most well regarded in many ways of the batch, and I think that based on what I've been reading on some of the synopses of some of these episodes, I think that's the one I'm going to dive into, and I can listen to these at work in the background. Sonic textures of radio broadcasting in that format, I think, is so interesting because you have, this radio is just so interesting to begin with. Taking the news in on the radio versus watching the news or reading the news, and listening to a story unfold rather than watching a film, I think has or watching a TV show is a real forgotten art. And the podcast has come back. It kind of comes and goes in the last few years, but the podcast is a really interesting format because depending on what topic you're listening to or or what the subject is or whatever, you just have this interesting relationship between the individual listener and the content on the show, whether they're describing something or going into detail or relaying an event, or talking about something in like a nonfiction format. Podcasts are sort of the next layer of radio, and I think and Zavla Play has mentioned this on numerous occasions, that the future of radio really is probably podcasting to a large extent, and internet radio. When FM and AM radio are gone, will be internet broadcasting, it will be internet subscription, and it will be interesting to see what people do if people use a service similar to radio, because right now it's so much about control. People want control over every song they listen to, when they listen to it, what artists they're listening to, artist, song, genre, and they don't want commercials either. So you subscribe to a streaming service like Spotify or Google Play or Tidal or any one of these vast services, or even SoundCloud, which has a pay option, which they're underway of. They bought out the majority holding company of SoundCloud, bought out the CEO because he was making such radical changes to the company that they felt he was running the company into the ground. So even SoundCloud, which was started as a means for artists to acquire tools to edit and publish their music for free, now has a streaming service option on it, which will probably soon end. But this stifling need for control, of complete and total control all the time, I think it takes out such a grand part of coming into the unknown, of finding out about content that isn't about the individual. I just think that there's such a quotient that's missing And pop culture is what suffers. It's not necessarily like, oh, people are going to suffer, but music is going to suffer. And I think the amount of talent that's going to emerge, and the variety of material, and also the quality of material, is going to exponentially shrink, because you're going to have less opportunity. In some ways, you have more opportunity for niche markets, because you're going to have a specific audience that's into specific things, specific subgenres, specific artists, but they don't necessarily want to pay the price of a CD anymore, or the price of a vinyl. People will pay. Some people buy vinyl albums still, or some people buy digital albums, digital copies on iTunes or on the digital music stores. But for the most part, when people get into an artist, or when people get into a film, or when people get into something, any sort of media or property, they don't want to physically acquire it anymore. They simply rent it, stream it, watch it, absorb it, listen to it, and even a lot of the times it's through illegal means. They stream it for free. It's not even through the price of a streaming service, which is like $10 a month or something, or even just renting a film online, which I think is like $2.99. In most cases, it's like $2.99 or $3.99. The price of renting it, people don't even want that, because that is either too much of an impediment, or it's just there's too many options for free, sub-free
Dude, I'm sorry I asked.
Gabe. Well, Mark, it's really depressing.
Oh man,
really
no,
depressing.
we got it. No. Let's set the record straight here. Enough of this stuff. Radio is obviously alive and well. We're all having a good time.
Still alive.
Man, I was listening. I was just like sinking until I said enough of this, man. We're talking, dude, suspense, Lights Out, The Mysterious Traveler, The Weird Circle, The Inner Sanctum, Nightfall,
The Weird
Midnight,
Circle,
Vanishing Point, CBS Radio Mystery Theater. Gabe, we got to get you back on board, man. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Man, you had me plummeting some depth, man, I didn't even want to reach, man. And I'm glad I brought the whole thing back up, man. And welcome back to your life, too, Gabe.
Thanks, Mark.
Enough of that stuff. Enough of that, man.
No, you're right. Well, Mark,
no,
it's
a great life, man. You may have got knocked down, but you got to get back up.
Well, Mark, there's a really good film that just came out this last weekend.
Let's hear about it.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, but Three Billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Three billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri, with Frances McDormand, is supposed to be just a fantastic ride. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Right now, they're saying that she's a front contender for Best Actress. A lot of James Brody and Richard Brody in The New Yorker said it's the best role that she's had since Fargo. I'm wildly looking forward to this movie. Eagerly anticipating seeing this film. So cinema's got that going for it right now.
Oh yeah, there's lots of fantastic offerings. I read that article. It was in the review was in the New York Times, of course. So yeah, that's a great film to look out for. Well, I shouldn't say great. That's a film of interest to look out for. Is also the new Greta Gerwig film. Not new. It's her directorial
Lady
debut,
Bird,
my man.
Yep. Well, Greta Gerwig is really a fantastic talent as an actress. I can't attest for Lady Bird because I haven't seen it yet, but I've been reading that it's one of the best films of the year. It's one of the most thought-provoking films, and it's a film that breaks the mold of the typical coming-of-age film. It has startling realism. It has a brilliant sense of humor, and that she's an artist in her own accord. That she definitely has similarities to her husband, Noah Baumbach, who is a brilliant filmmaker, but that this film, a debut film, is clearly her own, and that, people are already anticipating and awaiting her next work. Gerwig brings such a beautiful, lively intelligence and just a fresh energy to her work. She has like this unpredictable charm of she has a different variant on what Roger Ebert would call the manic pixie dream girl.
Okay.
she really does. She really came to prominence playing that character, except that as a lead and not as a typical supporting character, she really crafted these films, her presence in film, into being something a little bit more than just the quirky supporting character, because she did have a dynamic and really deft intelligence. There's something really charismatic and really intoxicating about her presence on film. She photographs really well. She has this real approachable but really otherworldly charm, where she does appear to have come from some very nearby but slightly distant planet. And she isn't, and it always seems like she isn't totally sure of what's going on. And she always seems to be talking about something that's completely unrelated to the event at hand. And her work in her husband's films, and the films of Noah Baumbach, is really extraordinary. She's very contemporary. I think she's meant to sort of mock and or satirize some of the modern some of the problems, or some of the behavior or the inklings of modern millennials. But she has such a humanistic flair, and she has this real beautiful humanity. She has this real witty touch, that even at her most annoying, she just is really wildly charming.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So yeah, that'll be great to look forward to, my man.
Absolutely.
Have you seen Mistress America? We both have yet to see it.
What? I'm sorry.
Mistress America, Noah Baumbach.
I still haven't seen it.
We're both in the same boat. We're going to get to shore, because I'm sure we're both going to check it out. It's on my mind.
Absolutely. Well, Baumbach really doesn't make bad films.
There you go.
His films are so worthwhile and so full of playwright energy.
What's the De Palma documentary he did, co-directed?
It's just called De Palma, and that film is, again, I'd almost raise that one above the Spielberg documentary, in terms of the fact that it doesn't tread new territory. You're just dealing with a filmmaker discussing his own work. That's it. But because of the fact that it has that singular, clarified purpose and focus,
yes,
it is so entertaining, Mark, to listen to De Palma sketch the memoirs of how each of these films, from the smallest film to the biggest films, of how they came into conception, what happened during the making of them, what were his feelings about the film, or lack of feeling in some cases.
Dude, sold. And I have to clarify this with purpose, Gabe. We are down to the second, man. Your enthusiasm runneth over, and that's why we appreciate you. Gabe, have a very, very, very good night.
Okay, Mark. Thanks. You too. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
We will be on at the same time next week on WXR WLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. To hear past episodes, visit riverwestradio.com/shows and click Cinema Fireside.